Imperfect cinema. Throughout this module, this term has had a few different meanings to me, and it's a side of filmmaking that I have enjoyed exploring and beginning to understand, despite its such subjective interpretations. It's a thought-provoking and artistic approach to film, which challenges traditional conventions of filmmaking which we see done every day in Hollywood and on our TV screens. It dares to stray into a more personal approach of film, and is a tool to showcase the beauty that flaws or experiments with video can have. The term imperfect cinema was first introduced by Julio Garcia Espinosa in 1969 during the Cuban film movement, where he describes one of the factors to be culturally meaningful within the revolutionary process. With both the emphasis being on both artistic and culturally meaningful, imperfect cinema opens up film to a whole new demographic of filmmakers. It's a side of film which embraces amateurism and provides a whole new toolbox to anyone with an important story to tell. It prioritizes the message being told by the filmmaker over the visual spectacle, unlike modern cinema. Espinosa's theory of imperfect cinema was expanded on in 1995, when Danish directors Lars von Trier and Thomas Vinterberg created the Dogma 95 Manifesto, which is a list of rules to follow to create an imperfect cinema film. These rules limited filmmakers and really furthered the feel of amateurism, with rules such as the camera must be handheld. For our first weekly task, we were assigned to watch Memories of Underdevelopment and to create a film in response that takes into consideration current political events. I decided to create War Torn, an insight from the perspective of a Ukrainian refugee fleeing his native home due to the current situation unfolding with Russia striking war. I used archived footage from the war and covered the history and emotional impacts of living in a war zone. I tried my best to pay homage to Memories of Underdevelopment, giving the film an intentionally janking editing style as I had seen in lesson. The next weekly task was one that designated with me and ended up inspiring my own final film. During our lesson, we learned about psychogeography in imperfect cinema, which is a concept that uses the film to serve as a looking glass into a specific location. It can allow the audience to explore and understand an emotional connection that the filmmaker has with a certain place. When we were given the weekly task of creating our own psychogeography film, I chose to use a narrator talking about his personal connection with nature and the outdoors while using it as a vessel for the audience to explore Dharma while using the footage I had filmed there. I really wanted to convey the emotional importance of this location through the narrator and emphasise the connection between them, as during the creation of this film, due to recent events, wild camping on Dartmoor had just been banned, and this is a topic which really affected me in real life, so thinking back to Espinosa's theory, I created a meaningful commentary on a social issue in my life using imperfect cinema. When it came to start working on our own film for imperfect cinema, I had a few ideas spring to mind, but the concept I finally settled on was creating a psychogeography film of Plymouth, while also paying homage to American director Wes Anderson. As I was researching imperfect cinema in modern day, I stumbled upon Anderson's work. As films, they completely deviate from traditional cinematography, with a high emphasis on consistent shot symmetry and comic-like colours which pop from the screen. This departure from reality is such a unique style, and I thought if I could find a way to mix this with a social commentary issue using a psychogeography piece, it could highlight what I saw most in imperfect cinema. Anderson himself uses his films as commentaries, with a lot of the characters in his film finding a sense of social isolation and ongoing challenges with social interaction. This ongoing theme, mixed with the constant symmetrical style of his shots, provides a relatable lens for audience members with autism, which is something Anderson does really well. I chose to highlight Plymouth as the location in my film and created the character of Alice. I designed her character to be an extremely exaggerated version of a naive girl from a small town, and right off the bat, I wanted to depart from any grounded reality. Most of the shots in the film with Alice have her breaking the fourth wall, looking right into the audience, which is a common theme in Anderson's work and is a big part of imperfect cinema, as it defies conventions of stereotypical storytelling and disrupts the illusion of a seamless narrative. I use a narrator to tell Alice's story and eventually describe Plymouth through her untainted and innocent eyes. I wanted to do this because it's no secret that most of the youth who live in Plymouth see it as a run-down city with many flaws, especially during recent months, with such prominent political issues related to the local council moving ahead with cutting down hundreds of trees in the city centre. But I wanted to completely defy expectations and use my films as a lens of seeing Plymouth from the perspective of a childlike and unnaive manner, the way my character Alice sees it. In terms of my shots, I stayed true to Anderson's style, using symmetry in almost every single scene, and I constantly use Alice as a vessel to break the fourth wall. During my editing process, I used a grid to ensure that all of the shots were perfectly symmetrical because getting this down was important to me. In the original draft of my film, I was originally going to have a twist ending, but after a cut to black after Alice's grand climax of experiencing such a marvellous cartoon-like adventure, it would fade into a gritty, realistic, handheld perspective of this place, completely contrasting everything that my film had been building up to at this point, and showing Plymouth from the perspective of someone who saw it as a run-down wasteland, as a jarring juxtaposition to comment on its current social status. But I was unable to follow through with this due to time constraints, unfortunately. In conclusion, Imperfect cinema is fluid and a unique way of telling a story through film while opposing the mainstream filmmaking industry, and because of its open interpretation, it can mean different things to different people, and that's the beauty of it. Some may see it as an opportunity to tell an important social issue with no budget and just passion, whereas some may see it as a way of defying conventions and experimenting with unique shots and concepts like breaking the fourth wall, which defies typical Hollywood film. And the beauty of Imperfect cinema is that both of these people are correct.